Wow. This deep dive, you've really outdone yourself this time. Cryptic writings, AI interpretations, a pen name practically begging to be Googled, OHID,
Yeah.
and the title. Get ready for this, everyone. I'm already hooked. Okay, so we've got these fragments, right? Some in English, some in Russian. And then on top of that, someone fed it all to an AI to get a book introduction out of it. Where do we even begin?
Well, I think what's so captivating here is that it's like we're piecing together a shattered mosaic.
Right.
These snippets, they're not just text on a page. They're like little windows into how someone somewhere is processing these really big, really complex ideas. And then on top of that, right, we've got this AI trying to make sense of it all. Like it's trying to, I don't know, understand the human experience or something.
Yeah, it's like getting a peek inside someone's mind, but the catch is this mind seems to be working on like 5 different levels at once.
Yeah.
Okay, to ground this a little bit, let's jump into some of those fragments you mentioned. For example, there's one that really jumped out at me. AOX scenarios. Crimin, you can go sleep now. You're A. It feels so futuristic, almost unsettling.
Yeah, it is unsettling, isn't it? This tiny little snippet, it throws us right into a world where AI isn't some, far-off concept. It's a constant presence in our lives. It's something so integrated that we're just like telling it to go to sleep as if it's, and that begs the question, what does it mean for technology to be so enmeshed in our lives that we just toss it to go to sleep like it's nothing? And what are these plur-up scenarios that are keeping it up all night, right?
Yeah, it's like this glimpse into a future we haven't quite figured out yet, And speaking of the future, there's another fragment that seems to touch on that. When robots on land, people in La La Land, watching the land via the band. It's almost poetic, but also a little chilling.
Absolutely. This one, it really speaks to the potential consequences of automation.
Yeah.
And our dependence, our increasing dependence, I should say, on technology. Because it's like, as robots take over the physical world, humans seem to retreat into this digital la-la land.
Yeah.
Experiencing the world through some kind of virtual lens, perhaps this band is a device, a network, who knows?
It's like this digital disconnect. We're physically present, but also somewhere else entirely.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got AI companions, robots running amok, and humans plugged into some kind of digital ether. And if that wasn't intriguing enough, we also have these Russian fragments you mentioned, adding a whole other dimension to this whole mystery.
Yeah, these Russian fragments are interesting. They're interesting because they seem to whisper of something deeper, something beyond just, the immediate technological landscape that we were just discussing.
And Google Translate only gets us so far with these.
Right, yeah.
For instance, this one, Orchichi Eblyuser, which translates to, and this is rough. You probably don't know what war is. It's like a punch to the gut,
It is.
Just this sudden reminder of human conflict.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's this stark reminder that no matter how advanced our technology becomes, some human experiences, especially the pain of war, remain universal. They remain timeless. It kind of injects this sense of gravity into everything, of lived experience that contrasts so sharply with all this high-tech stuff we were just talking about.
It's like ONID is reminding us that even in this potential future, this future dominated by technology and AI, that the human element, with all of its complexity and all of its darkness, it's never truly left behind.
Right, exactly. And this sense of human experience, I think, is further emphasized in another one of the Russian fragments.
Weishi Tharafada, Emo Shakyo, Emma Chakowo, which, if I can try my hand at this again, translates roughly to two big differences. The difference in time and the difference in space, they separate us.
It's like a lament on the nature of human connection, or the lack thereof.
Yeah.
Right. It's like we might be surrounded by all this technology, but are we truly connected?
Right.
So where does this leave us? We have these snippets about a technologically advanced future, maybe even dystopian. We have glimpses of raw human emotion. And then there's this feeling of, I don't know, yearning, disconnection. Yeah, I think that's a very, very astute observation. It's like theody is weaving together all of these different strands. We've got technology, we've got humanity, we've got war, connection, isolation. And we're only just beginning to glimpse the larger tapestry,
Okay.
Which brings us, of course, to this AI's interpretation of the book introduction you sent over. Perhaps that can shed some light on how these fragments might fit together.
Okay, all right. So let's talk about this AI-generated book intro, because it is a lot to unpack. What was your take on it?
It's fascinating how the AI seems to have absorbed AID's style.
Yeah.
Like it's not your typical book jacket blurb, but there are some real gems hidden in there.
Oh, yeah, totally. For example, it describes the book as a journey through thousands of stones. Okay, so maybe a little abstract. But I don't know, it makes you think about each of these little fragments as like pieces of something larger, right?
Right.
And then it gets even more interesting when it talks about how these stones chip away at the protective layers of our being, exposing our raw selves. I mean, that's pretty heavy stuff.
It really is. And I think the AI is picking up on something really crucial here. This raw, almost vulnerable quality that's embedded in Hosey's writing. Because even though these fragments are super brief and they seem disconnected at first, there's this real depth of feeling to them.
Yeah.
As they're peeling back layers, not just of ideas, but of like the human experience itself.
Yeah, and it reminds me of that line we were talking about earlier. Hold on, I've got it written down somewhere. Here it is. Łomowi, ha? Jos odemewi, jos enik, omewi, jomewi.
Yeah.
Which, if I remember correctly, translates to something like, it's too painful to imagine the whole world, and to live in the world is unbearable, and the gaze falls into the abyss of pain.
Okay, it's dark, but so powerful.
Exactly. And that's where this AI's analysis gets even more interesting, because it's suggesting that Scheide's work isn't just about presenting ideas, it's about really feeling your way through them, grappling with these raw, sometimes painful realities of existence.
It's like they're inviting us to just sit with the discomfort of these big questions.
Yeah. And it's not just the emotional depth, right? The AI also kept coming back to this recurring theme of distorted time in Haidi's writing.
Right. The AI specifically points to phrases like, time itself stretches, contracts, and distorts, as if AID might be challenging our perception of reality itself, like playing with the boundaries of how we experience time.
It's funny you should mention that, because have you ever had those moments where, like, you feel like time is playing tricks on you? Like, some weeks just fly by and others seem to drag on forever?
Oh, absolutely. It's such a common human experience, this totally subjective experience of time. And you're right, it does seem like AID might be tapping into that very feeling that, like, time isn't always linear.
Exactly.
It's fluid.
Okay, so to bring this all together, we've got these fragments about a technologically advanced future, maybe even a dystopian future, but there's also this clear thread of raw human emotion and this sense of distorted reality that keeps popping up. And the AI seems to suggest that these aren't just random ideas, but pieces of a larger exploration into, well, what it means to be human in a world increasingly dominated by technology.
Exactly. And this intersection of technology, humanity, and the distortion of our perceived reality. I think that's where the real heart of Hutaidi's work might lie.
Okay.
It's in this space, this really uncomfortable space, where I think we could really start to unpack the bigger picture, the potential meanings behind all of these, these strange little fragments.
Okay, so let's dive into that a bit deeper, shall we? If these fragments are like individual brushstrokes, what kind of bigger picture might HID be painting? So we've got these fragments about a technologically advanced future, maybe even a dystopian future. We see AI companions, robots on land, people plugged into La La Land, but there's also this clear thread of raw human emotion woven throughout. And then there's this sense of distorted reality that keeps popping up. If these fragments are like individual brushstrokes, what kind of bigger picture might HID be painting?
It's like ADD is holding up a fractured mirror to our own anxieties about the future.
Okay.
We see it in that unsettling line about the Billick scenarios and telling the AI to go sleep. There's this tension, right, between the convenience that technology offers and this potential for it to become controlling, invasive even.
Yeah, it's like that classic sci-fi trope where humans create the very thing that ends up enslaving them.
Exactly.
But it's like with HID, it's told through these fragmented, almost poetic glimpses.
Precisely. And it's not just about technology taking over, right? Remember that other fragment? When robots on land, people in La La Land?
Yeah.
HID seems to be exploring the other side of that coin, too. Our human tendency to disengage, to retreat into these digital spaces as a way of coping with a world that just feels increasingly complex and overwhelming.
It's like that feeling you get when you've been scrolling through social media for like an hour. You're bombarded with all this information, but it's also surface level. And you come away feeling strangely empty, disconnected.
Right, exactly.
Is that what HID is getting at here, the sense of digital fragmentation?
Yeah, I think that's a really astute observation, because this fragmentation that we see in their writing, this sense of time being distorted, It really does mirror our own fragmented experience in the digital age.
Hmm.
Think about it. We're constantly bombarded with these snippets of information, these little fragments, but do they ever really add up to a coherent understanding of the world, of ourselves even?
It makes you wonder if all this technology, which is supposed to connect us, is actually just pushing us further apart.
Right. And that's where those really poignant Russian fragments come in.
Yeah.
Because they remind us that even in this world saturated with technology, certain human experiences, they remain constant. That line about war, you probably don't know what war is. It cuts through all the noise, doesn't it?
It does.
It reminds us of this shared human capacity for suffering, for resilience that transcends time and technological progress.
It's like a thread connecting us back to the past, to those who came before and experienced the world in a completely different way. And yet, there's still that shared human experience.
Exactly. And that sense of connection, of shared experience, is further emphasized in that other line. Two big differences, the difference in time and the difference in space. They separate us. It speaks to that very human longing for connection that persists, even in a world that often feels so isolating.
It's like FOUID is urging us to bridge those divides, to remember our shared humanity even as technology sort of threatens to pull us further apart. So if we bring it all together, we've got these glimpses into a future grappling with technology, these raw, emotional explorations, and this undercurrent of longing for connection. What does it all mean? Is Saradi offering answers, or are they simply posing questions for us to ponder?
I think that's the beauty of Haridi's work, right?
Okay.
It doesn't offer any easy answers. Instead, it presents us with this kaleidoscope of fragments and invites us to be the ones to piece them together, to find our own meaning within the ambiguity.
So for our listeners who are probably already halfway through writing their own fragmented masterpieces inspired by Haridi, what's the takeaway? What can we learn from this deep dive into...
Oh, I think the takeaway here is that sometimes the most profound journeys are those without a clear destination. It isn't about finding all the answers. It's about embracing the questions. It's about sitting with the discomfort of uncertainty and finding beauty in those fragments. It's about remembering that even in a world increasingly dominated by technology, the human experience, in all its messy complexity, remains our most profound mystery.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the enigmatic world of FID. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to all the fragments we discussed. And until next time, happy exploring.